On November 14, 1998, the members of Tectonic Theater Project traveled to Laramie, Wyoming, and conducted interviews with the people of the town. During the next year, we would return to Laramie several times and conduct over 200 interviews. The play you're about to see is edited from those interviews, as well as from journal entries by members of the company and other found texts. Company member Greg Pirati.
My first interview was with Detective Sergeant Hing of the Laramie Police Department. At the start of the interview, he was sitting behind his desk, sitting something like this. I was born and raised here. My family is third generation. My grandparents moved here in the early 1900s. We've had basically three. Well, my daughter makes the fourth generation. Quite a while. It's a good place to live. Good people. Lots of space. Now, all the towns in southern Wyoming are laid out in space because the railroad came through. It was how far they could go before having to refuel and re-water, and Laramie was a major stopping point. That's why all the towns are spaced so far apart. We're one of the largest states in the country, and the least populated.
There's so much space between people and towns here. So much time for reflection.
Rebecca Hilliker, head of the theater department at the University of Wyoming.
You have an opportunity to be happy in your life here. I found that people here were nicer than in the Midwest, where I used to teach, because they were happy. They were glad the sun was shining, and it shines a lot here.
What you have is, you have your old-time traditional ranchers. They've been here forever. Laramie's been the hub of where they come for their supplies and stuff like that.
Stewardship is the one thing our ancestors taught us.
Eileen Engen, rancher.
If you don't take care of the land, then you ruin it, and you lose your living. So you first of all have to take care of your land and do everything you can to improve it.
I love it here.
Doc O'Connor, limousine driver.
You couldn't put me in that mess out there back east. The best thing about it is the climate, the cold, the wind. They say the Wyoming wind will drive a man insane, but you know what? It don't bother me. Well, some of the times it bothers me, but most of the time it don't.
And then you've got the university population.
I moved here after living in a couple of big cities.
Philip Dubois, president of the University of Wyoming.
I loved it there, but you'd have to be out of your mind to let your kids out after dark. But here in the summertime, my kids play at night till 11 o'clock, and I don't think twice about it.
And then you've got the people who live in Laramie, basically.
I moved here from rural Texas, Zachy Salmon, Laramie resident.
Now, in Laramie, if you don't know a person, you will definitely know somebody they know. So it can only be 1 degree removed at most. And for me, I mean, I love it. I love to go to the grocery store because I get to visit with 4 or 5 or 6 people every time I go. And I don't really mind people knowing my business because, well, what's my business? I mean, my business is basically good.
I like the trains, too. They don't bother me. Well, you know, some of the time they bother me. Most of the time they don't. Even though one goes by every 13 minutes out where I live.
Doc actually lives up in Goslar, but everybody in Laramie knows him. He's also not really a doctor.
They used to carry cattle, then trains, and now all they carry is diapers and cars.
I'm from Cody, Wyoming.
April Silva, university student.
Laramie's better than where I grew up. I'll give it that.
It's a good place to live. Good people. Lots of space. Now, when the incident happened with that boy, a lot of press people came here, and one day some of them followed me up to the crime scene, and, well, it was a beautiful day. Absolutely gorgeous. Real clear and crisp. And the sky was that blue, you know. You'll never be able to paint it. Just sky blue. And the mountains in the background with a little snow on them. Just gorgeous. And this one reporter, a lady person who was out there, she said,
Well, who found the boy? Who was out here anyway?
and I said, well, it's a real popular area for people to run. And mountain biking's real big, and horseback riding, and, well, it's just close to town. And she looked at me and she said,
Well, who in the hell would want to run out here?
and I'm thinking, lady, you're just missing the point. All you gotta do is turn around, see the mountains, smell the air, listen to the birds, just take in
Laramie is for us?
Jedadiah Schultz.
If you had asked me before, I would have told you Laramie is a beautiful town, secluded enough that you could have your own identity. A town with a strong sense of community. Everyone knows everyone. A town with a personality that most larger cities are stripped of. But now, after Matthew, I would say Laramie is a town defined by an accident, a crime. Become Waco, become Jasper, where a noun, a definition, a sign. You may be able to get rid of that, but it'll sure take a while.
Journal entries, members of the company, Andy Paris.
Moises called, saying he had an idea for his next theater project. But there was a somberness to his voice, so I asked him what it was about. And he told me he wanted to do a piece on what's happening in Wyoming.
Stephen Beller.
Lee told me the company was thinking of going out to Laramie to conduct interviews, and they wanted me to come. But I'm hesitant. I've no real interest in prying into a town's unraveling.
Amanda Gronick.
I've never done anything like this in my life. Well, how do you get people to talk to you? What do you ask?
Moises Kaufman.
The company has agreed that we should go to Laramie for a few weeks to interview people, and we've been afraid of taking a group of 10 people on a trip of this nature. Must make some safety rules. Everyone carries cell phones. No one works alone. I've made some preliminary contacts with Rebecca Hilliker, head of the theater department at the University of Wyoming. She's hosting a party for us our first night in Laramie and has promised to introduce us to possible interviewees.
I must tell you that when I first heard you were thinking of coming here, when you first called me, I wanted to say you've just kicked me in the stomach. Why are you doing this to me? But then I thought, that's stupid. I mean, you're not doing this to me. And more importantly, I thought about it, and I realized that we've had so much negative closure on this whole thing. And the students really need to talk. I mean, when this first happened, they started talking about it, but then the media descended and all dialogue stopped. You know, I love my students because they're free thinkers, and you may not like what they have to say, and you may not like their opinions because they can be very redneck, but they're honest and they're truthful. So there is a dynamic here. There is an excitement here with my students that I never had when I was in the Midwest or in North Dakota, because there was so much Puritanism that dictated how people looked at the world that a lot of times they didn't have an opinion. You couldn't get them to express an opinion. And quite honestly, I'd rather have opinions that I don't like and have that kind of dynamic in education. You know, I think there's a student you should talk to. His name is Jedadiah Schultz.
I've lived in Wyoming my whole life. My family has been in Wyoming for generations. Now, when the time came to go to college, my parents couldn't afford to send me to college. I wanted to study theater, but I knew that if I was going to go to college, I was going to have to get on a scholarship. So they had this competition each year, this Wyoming State High School competition, and I knew that if I didn't take first place in the duets, that I wasn't going to get a scholarship. So I went to the theater department at the university looking for good scenes, and I asked one of the professors, I was like, I need a killer scene. He was like, here you go, this is it. And it was from Angels in America. Now I've read it, and I knew that I could win first place if only I did a good enough job. Now, when the time came, I told my parents that they'd come to the competition. Now you have to understand, my parents come to everything, every fall game, every hockey game, everything I've ever done. But they took me into their room, and they told me that if I did that scene, that they weren't going to come to see me in the competition. Because they believed it was wrong, that homosexuality was wrong. They believed that strongly that they weren't going to come to see their son, and probably the most important thing he'd ever done to that point in his life. And I didn't know what to do. I never, ever gone against my parents' wishes before, but I decided to do it. And when it was over, all I can remember remember about the competition. It's me and my sea partner. We came up, we shook hands, there was a standing ovation. Oh man, it was incredible. And we took first place and we won. And that's how come I can afford to go to university, because of that scene. It was one of the best moments of my life, and my parents went there to see me do it. And to this day, this is the only thing they've never come see me in. And looking back on it, I think, well, why did I do it? Why did I oppose my parents? Because I'm not gay. So why did I do it? And I guess the only answer I could give is, well, I wanted to win. Oh, such a good scene. It was like the best scene. Do you know Mr. Christian? Maybe you could tell him. Company member Greg Pirati.
We arrived today in the Denver airport and drove to Laramie. The moment we crossed the Wyoming border, I swear I saw a herd of buffalo. Also, I thought it strange that the Wyoming sign said,
Wyoming, like no place on earth.
instead of Wyoming, like no place else on earth.
Company member Lee Fondakowski.
I stopped at a local inn for a bite to eat, and my waitress said to me,
Hi, my name is Debbie. I was born in 1954, and Debbie Reynolds was big then. So yes, there are a lot of us around. Now, I promise not to slap you if you leave your elbows on the table.
Today, the company tried to explain to me, to no avail, what chicken fried steak was.
Now, are you from Wyoming, or are you just passing through?
we're just passing through.
Oh.
Company member Barbara Gates.
We arrived in Laramie tonight, just past the Welcome to Laramie sign, population 26,687. The first thing to greet us was Walmart. In the dark, we could be on any main drag in America, fast food chains, gas stations. But as we drove into the downtown area by the railroad tracks, the buildings still looked like a turn-of-the-century Western town. Oh, and as we passed the University Inn, on the sign where amenities such as heated pool or cable TV are usually touted, it said, "Hate is not a Laramie value."
Greg Pirati.
I met today with two longtime Laramie residents, Allison Mears and Marge Murray, two social service workers who taught me a thing or two.
Well, what Laramie used to be like when Marge was growing up, well, it was mostly rural.
Yeah, it was. I enjoyed it, you know. My kids all had horses.
Well, there was more land. I mean, you could keep your pet cow, your horse, your little chickens. You know, just have your little bit of acreage.
Yeah, I could run around the house in my all-togethers, do the housework while the kids were in school, and nobody could see me. And if they got that
Well,
close,
then that was their problem.
I just want to make sure I got the expression right. In your all-togethers?
Well, yeah, honey. Why wear clothes? Now, how's he going to use that in his play?
So, this was a big ranching town.
Oh, not just ranching. No, this was a big railroad town at one time. Before they moved everything to Cheyenne and Green River and Omaha. So now, well, it's just a drive-through spot for the railroad. Because even, when was it, in the 50s? Well, they had this one big roundhouse. And they had such a shop, they could build a complete engine.
oh, they did. My mom worked there.
Your mom worked in the roundhouse?
Yeah, she washed engines. Her name was Minnie. We used to, you know, sing that song for her. You know that song?
What song?
Run for the roundhouse, Minnie, they can't corner you there.
Oh, let me tell you, Wyoming is bad in terms of jobs. I mean, the university has all the high whoop-de-doo jobs,
Now what it is a class distinction. It's about the well-educated and the ones that are not. And the educated don't understand why the ones that are not don't get educated. Well, that's why I told you before my kids had to fight because their mother was a bartender. Never mind, I was the best damn bartender in town.
And she was.
That's not bragging. That's fact.
Yeah, but in Laramie, if it weren't for the university, well, we'd just be SOL.
What's SOL?
Well, do I have to say it? Well, it's shit out of luck. Oh, Lordy, you got that on your tape. Boy, you are getting an education today.
Yeah, I guess I am. So, let me just ask you, what was your response when this happened to Matthew Shepard?
Well, I've been close enough to the case to know many of the people. I have a daughter that's on the sheriff's department. Now, as far as that gay issue, I don't give a damn one way or another. As long as they don't bother me. And even if they do, I just say, no, thank you. And that's the attitude of most of the Laramie population. Well, they might poke one if they were in a bar situation. You know, they've been drinking. They might actually smack one in the mouth. But then they just walk away. Most of them said they'd say, I don't swing that way, and whistle on about their business. Laramie is live and let live.
I'd say Marge probably knows a lot more, except she's even willing to say, and we have to respect her for that.
Well, where are you going with this story?
Well, we still haven't decided. When we're finished, we're going to try and bring it around to Laramie.
Well, then there are parts I won't tell you.
Company member Andy Paris.
Today, for the first time, we met someone who actually knew Matthew Shepard. Tricia Steger, owner of a shop in town, referred to him as Matt.
Matt used to come into my shop. That's how I knew him.
It was the first time I heard him referred to as Matt instead of Matthew. Did he go by Matt to everyone?
Well, on the 2nd of October, I get a phone call, about 10 after 7.
Doc O'Connor.
And it was Matthew Shepard. And he said to me, can you pick me up at the corner of 3rd and Grant? So anyhow, I'll pull up the corner and see who? Matthew Shepard. Now, it's a little guy, about 5'2", soaking wet. I bet you 97 pounds, tops. Now, they said he was 110, but I wouldn't believe it. They also said that he was 5'5" in the newspapers, but this man, he was really only about 5'2", maybe 5'1". So he walks up the window, and, well, I'm going to go in steps so you can better understand the principle of this man. So he walks up to the window, and I say, are you Matthew Shepard? And he goes, yeah, I'm Matthew Shepard. But I don't want you to call me Matthew or Mr. Shepard. I don't want you to call me anything. He said, my name is Matt. I want you to know that I am gay, and we are going to go to a gay bar. Do you have a problem with that? And I said, how you pay it? See, the fact is, Laramie doesn't have any gay bars, and for that matter, neither does Wyoming. So he was hiring me to take him out to Fort Collins, Colorado. It's about an hour away. Matt was a blunt little shit. He always was. That's why I liked him, you see, because he was straightforward. You see what I'm saying? Maybe gay, but straightforward. You see what I'm saying?
I don't know, you know, how does one person ever really tell about another? You should really talk to my sister Romaine. She was a very close friend of Matthew's.
We never called him Matthew, actually. Most of the time, we just called him Choo Choo. You know, because we used to call him Matthew, and then we just call him Choo Choo. Whenever I think of Matthew, I always think of his incredible beaming smile. I mean, he'd walk in and he'd be like, you know, and he'd smile at everybody, and he'd just make you feel great. And he would like stare people down in the coffee shop because he always wanted to sit on the end seat so that he could talk to me while I was working. And if somebody was sitting in that seat, well, he'd just sit there and stare at them until they left. And then he would claim his spot. But Matthew definitely had a political side to him. Yeah, he really wanted to get into political affairs. That's all his real interest was watching CNN and MSNBC. I mean, that's the only TV station I ever saw his TV tuned into. He was really smart in political affairs. Just not so smart on, like, common sense things. to school.
Matthew was very shy when he first came,
John Peacock, Matthew Shepard's academic advisor.
to the point of being somewhat mousy, I'd almost say. He was having some difficulties adjusting, but this was home for him, and he made that quite clear. And so, his mousiness, his shyness gave way to a person who was excited about this track he was about to embark upon. He was just figuring out wanting to work in human rights and how to do that. And when that happens, this person begins to bloom a little bit. He was starting to say, wow, there are opportunities here for me. There are things I can do in the world. I can be important.
I did hear from Matthew about 48 hours before his attack, and he said that he had joined the gay and lesbian group on campus and that he was enjoying it. You know, they were getting ready for Pride Week and whatnot. I mean, he was totally stoked about school. Yeah, he was really happy about being there.
And in retrospect, and I can only say this in retrospect, of course, I think that's where he was headed, towards human rights, which only adds to the irony and tragedy of this.
Let me tell you something else here. There's more gay people in Wyoming than meets the eye. I know for a fact, and they're not particularly the, what do you call it, the queens, you know, the gay people, the queens, you know, the run around faggot type. No, they're the ones that throw bail. Hey, jump on horses, brand them, and kick ass, you see what I'm saying? As I was saying, don't fuck with a Wyoming queer. Because they'll kick you in your fucking ass. But that's not the point of what I'm trying to say. See, I know a lot of gay people in Wyoming. I know a lot of people, period. I've been lived up here some 40-odd years, and I don't think Laramie gives a damn. One way or another, whether you're gay or straight, that's just what I said. Doesn't matter. If there's 8 men and 1 woman in a Wyoming bar, which is often the case, now, you gotta stop and think. Who's getting what? You see what I'm saying? Now, geez, don't take a big, intelligent mind to figure that one out.
My understanding when I first came here
Catherine Connolly.
is that I was the first out lesbian or gay faculty member on campus. And that was in 1992, so that wasn't that long ago. I was asked at my interview what my husband did, so I came out then. You want a funny story? Well, when you first get here as a new faculty member, there's all these things you have to do, and I was in my office and I noticed this woman had called, and I was expecting, you know, some health insurance phone call, something like that. So I called her back, and I can hear her. She's working away, clicking away on her keyboard, and I say, you know, this is Kathy Connolly returning your phone call, and she said, oh, it's you. And I thought, this is bizarre, and she said, I hear you're gay. I hear you are. And I was like, uh-huh. And she said, I hear you came as a couple. I'm one too, not a couple, just a person. And so she was a kind of lesbian who knew I was coming and wanted to come over and meet me immediately. And she later told me that there were other lesbians who wouldn't be seen with me, that I would irreparably taint them, that just to be seen with me could be a problem.
When I came here, I knew it was going to be hard as a gay man.
Jonas Slonaker.
But I kept telling myself, people should live where they want to live. And well, there would be times I'd go down to Denver and I'd go to gay bars there, and people would ask where I was from. And I'd say, Laramie, Wyoming. And I met so many men down there, so many gay men who grew up there. And they're like, this is not a place I could live. How could you live there? I had to get out. Every once in a while, there would be a guy. Oh gosh, I miss Laramie. I mean, I really loved it there. That's where I want to live. And they get this starry-eyed look. And I'm like, well, if that's where you want to live, do it! I mean, imagine what it would be like if more gay people stayed in small towns. But it's easier said than done, of course.
Today, we are moving from our hotel into the Best Western.
Moises Kaufman.
My hope is that it's a better Western.
Amanda Braun. Today we
divided up to go to different churches in the community. Moises and I were given a Baptist church. We were welcomed into the services by the Reverend himself, standing at the entrance to the chapel. This is what I remember about his sermon that morning.
My dear brothers and sisters, I'm here today to bring you the word of the Lord. Now, I have a simple truth that I tell to my colleagues, and I'm going to tell it to you today. The word is either sufficient or it's not. Now, scientists tell me that human history, that the world is 5 billion or 6 billion years old. What's a billion years, give or take? Now, the Bible tells me that human history is 6,000 years old. The word is either sufficient or it's not.
Ah, the sociology of religion in the West.
Stephen Meade Johnson, Unitarian minister.
Dominant religious traditions in this town, Baptists, Mormons, they're all over. It's not just Salt Lake, you know. They're like jam on toast down here.
The Mormon church has something a little different going that irritates some folks.
Doug Laws, state ecclesiastical leader for the Mormon church.
And that is that we absolutely believe that God still speaks to man. We don't believe that it happened and some folks wrote it down in the Bible. God speaks to us today, and we believe that. We believe that the prophet of the church has the authority to receive inspiration and revelation from God.
So the spectrum would be on the left side of that panel. Well, so far left that I am probably sitting by myself is me and the Unitarian Church. Now, Unitarians are by and large humanists, many of whom are atheists. I mean, we're not even sure we're religion. And to my right on the spectrum, to his credit, Father Roger, Catholic priest, who is well established here, and God bless him, he did not equivocate at all when this happened. He hosted the vigil for Matthew that night.
I was really jolted because, when we did the vigil, we wanted to involve other ministers. And so we called some of them, and they were not going to be involved. It was like we are going to stand back and wait and see which way the wind is blowing. And this angered me immensely. We are supposed to stand out as leaders. And I thought, well, what's going on here?
God has set boundaries. And one of our responsibilities is to learn what is it that God wants. So you study scriptures, you look to your leaders, then you kind of get an idea for what the boundaries are. Now, once you know what the boundaries are, then you get an idea for what's out of bounds. There was a proclamation that came out on the family. A family is described as one woman, one man, and children. That is a family. That's about as clear as you can state it. There is no sexual deviation in the Mormon church, no leniency. We just believe it's out of bounds.
I warn you, you will be mocked. You will be ridiculed for the singularity of your faith. But you let the Bible be your guide. It's in there. It's all in there.
The Christian pastors, many of the conservative ones, were silent on this. Conservative Christians use the Bible to show the rest of the world it says here in the Bible. And most Americans believe that the Bible is the Word of God. And how are you going to fight that?
I'm a biblicist, which means the Bible does not need me to be true. The Bible is true whether I believe it or not. The Word is either sufficient or it's not.
I arrived in Laramie September 15th. I looked around. Tumbleweed, cement factory. Said, what in the hell am I doing in Wyoming? 3 weeks later, I found out what the hell I'm doing in Wyoming.
I had breakfast this morning with a university student named Jedadiah. She is an Islamic feminist who likes to do things her own way.
I've lived in Laramie since I was 4. Yeah, my parents are from Bangladesh. 2 years ago, because I'm Muslim, I decided to start wearing a scarf. That's really changed my life in Laramie. Yeah, like, people say things to me like, they'll be like, I know it's part of your religion, but why? And I mean, how am I supposed to go into the whole doctrine of physical modesty and my own spiritual relationship with the Lord, standing there with my pop and chips? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, it's so unreal to me that, that a group from New York would be writing a play about Laramie. And then I was picturing, like, you're going to be in a play about my town. You're going to be on stage in New York. And you're going to be acting like you're us. That's so weird.
Hello?
Yes, hello. My name is Amanda Gronick, and I'm here in Laramie working with a theater company. I went to the Reverend, your husband's church on Sunday, and I was extremely interested in speaking with the Reverend about some of his thoughts about recent events.
Oh, well, I don't think he'll want to talk to you. He has very biblical views about homosexuality. He doesn't condone that kind of violence. But then, he doesn't condone that kind of lifestyle. You know what I mean? He was just bombarded with the press after this happened, and the media has just been terrible about the whole thing.
I know, I really understand. It must have just been terrible.
Well, yes, I mean, I think we're all just hoping this just goes away.
Well, do you think maybe I could call back and speak with your husband just briefly?
All right. You can call him back tonight at 9 o'clock.
Oh, thank you very much. I'll do that.
Today, Barbara and I went to the Fireside Bar, which is the last place Matthew was seen in public.
Fireside. Definitely feels like a college bar with a couple of pool tables and a stage area for karaoke night.
Still,
A few regulars in the late afternoon were hardly the college crowd.
the first person we spoke to was Matt Mickelson, the owner.
My great-great-grandfather moved here in 1862. Here in Laramie's first opera house. It was called the Old Blue Front. And in 1872, Grandma Louisa Swain cast the first woman's ballot in any free election in the world. And that is why Wyoming is called the Equality State. So, what I want to do is reestablish my bar business as the Old Blue Front Opera House and Good Time Emporium. You know, I want to have a restaurant. I want to have a pool hall. I want to do all this shit, you know, every night's ladies' night. So, the Fireside is my first step to the Old Blue Front Opera House and Good Time Emporium.
Well, what about the night Matthew Shepard was here?
We had karaoke that night. 20, 30 people here. Matthew Shepard came in sitting right where you're sitting, just hanging out. You know, if you want to talk to somebody, you should talk to Matt Galloway. He's the kid that was bartending that night. You'll have to meet him. His character stands for itself. Hey, is Galloway bartending tonight?
Okay, I'm gonna make this brief, quick, get it over with, buddy. It will be everything factual, just the facts. Okay, here we go. 10 o'clock, I clock in, usual time, Tuesday night. 10:30, Matthew Shepard shows up, alone, sits down, orders a Heineken.
Phil LaBrie, friend of Matthew Shepard.
Matt liked to drink Heineken and nothing else. Heineken, even though you pay $9.50 for a six-pack. But he'd always order the same thing.
So, what can I tell you about Matt? Well, if you had 100 customers just like him, it'd be the most perfect bar I've ever been in, okay? And nothing to do with sexual orientation, no. Absolute mannerisms, you know, manners, politeness, intelligence, taking care of me, as in tips, you know, everything. Conversation, dress nice, clean cut. Some people you just know, sits down, please, thank you, offers intellect, you know, within their vocabulary. So he kicks it there. Doesn't seem to have any worries or like he's looking for anyone, just enjoying his drink and the company around. Now, approximately 11:45, Aaron McKinley and Russell Henderson walk in. Now, I didn't know their names then, but they're the accused. They're the perps. They're the accused. And, well, they just walk in very stone-faced, you know, dirty, grungy, rude, gimme, that type of thing. And they walk up to the bar and, as you know, pay for a pitcher with dimes and quarters, which, I mean, you don't forget that. That's something you don't forget. $5.50 in dimes and quarters? Yeah, that's a freaking thing. there with them in the pool room, kept to themselves. Next thing you know, about half an hour later, they're kind of walking around, no beer. And I remember thinking to myself, well, I'm not going to ask them if they want another one. Obviously, they just paid for a pitcher with dimes and quarters. Yeah, I got a real good feeling that they don't have any more money.
Romaine Patterson.
Money meant nothing to Matthew because he came from a lot of it. And he would like hand over his wallet in 2 seconds because money meant nothing. Well, his shoes might have meant something. They can say it was robbery. I don't buy it for even an iota of a second.
Then a moment later, I look over and I see Henderson and McKinley talking to Matthew Shepherd.
Aaron said that a guy walked up to him and said that he was gay and wanted to get with Aaron and Russ.
Kristen Price, girlfriend of Eric McKinney.
And that he got aggravated with it and told him that he was straight and didn't want anything to do with it, and he just walked away. He said that's when he and Russell went into the bathroom and decided to pretend they were gay and get him in the truck and rob him.
Okay, no. They stated that Matt approached them, that he came on to them. I absolutely, positively disbelieve and refute that statement. 100%. I refute it. And I'm going to give you 2 reasons why. 1, character reference. Why would he approach them? I mean, why them? He wasn't approaching anyone else in the bar, and they say he was a gay. He was a flaming gay. He's going to come on to people like that? Bullshit. I mean, he never came on to me. Hello. He came on to them. He came on to them. I don't buy it. And 2, territorialism is the word that I will use for this. And that's the fact that Matt was sitting here. Aaron and Russ were back there in the pool. Now, upon their first interaction, they were seen here, in Matt's area, in the same area that Matt had been sitting in all this. So, I mean, who approached who by that?
But Matthew was the kind of person, like he would never not talk to somebody for any reason. I mean, if somebody started talking to him, he'd be like, oh, blah, 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 you know. He just never had a problem just striking up a conversation with anybody.
Matt did feel lonely a lot of times. Me knowing that and knowing how gullible that could be, he would have walked right into it. The fact that he was alone at the bar without any friends made him that much more vulnerable.
So, the only thing is, and this is basically what I'm testifying to, because, you know, I'm also basically the key eyewitness in this trial. Basically what I'm testifying to is that I saw Matthew leave. I saw 2 individuals leave with Matthew, and I didn't see their faces, but I saw the back of their heads, and at the same time, Henderson and McKinney were no longer around. So, I mean, you do the math.
Actually, I think the DJ was the last one to see him that night. Gave him a cigarette or something. His name's Shadow.
You could see it. They were standing there, you know. He was looking over to them, and they were looking back at him, and I stood and talked to Matt for like a good 10 minutes. And you seen them guys with him? You seen them getting like worried, like, you know, anxious to leave and shit. So when they took off, I seen it when they took off. It was in a black truck. It was a small truck. And the 3 of them sat in the front seat and Matt sat in the middle. And I didn't think nothing of it, you know? I didn't figure them guys were gonna be like that.
A friend of Aaron McKinney.
Oh, I've known Aaron a long time. Aaron was a good kid. I liked Aaron a lot. That's why I was shocked when I heard this. I mean, I know he was living out far at his trailer house, what he told me with his girl. They must got pregnant as soon as they started dating because, you know, they had a kid. Yeah, he's 21 years old. He's running around with a kid. That's the type of person Aaron was. Always dressed in, like, big clothes with Tommy Hilfiger, Polo, Gucci. You know, at the time I knew him, he was just a young kid, you know, trying to fit in, acting tough, acting cool. But, you know, you could get in his face about it, he'd back down like he was some kind of scared kid.
Sherry Amundsen.
Russell was just so sweet. He was the one who was the Eagle Scout. His whole presence was just quiet and sweet. So of course it doesn't make sense to me. And I know people snap and whatever. And it's not like we had a real intimate relationship. I was just his landlord. I did work with him at the chuck wagon too. And I remember like at the Christmas party, he was just totally drunk out of his mind. were all pretty much just party town. But he wasn't belligerent. His personality didn't change. He was still the same little meek Russell. And I remember him coming up to me and saying, "When you get a chance, Sherry, can I have a dance?" Which we never did get around to doing that. But now, I just want to shake him. What were you thinking? What in the hell were you thinking?
Fence. I've been out there 4 times. I've taken visitors. That place has become a pilgrimage site. Clearly, it's a very powerful personal experience to go out there. It is so stark and so empty. And you can't help but think of Matthew there for 18 hours in the nearly freezing temperatures. With that view up there, isolated. And the God, my God, why have you forsaken me comes to mind.
Company member Greg Pirati.
Phil Labrie, a friend of Matthew Shepard's, took us to the fence today. I broke down the minute I touched it. I feel such a strong kinship with this young man. On the way back, I made sure nobody saw me crying.
Lee Fondakowski.
Greg was crying on the way back. I couldn't bring myself to tears, but I felt the same way. I've got an interview this afternoon with Eric Kreifels. He's the boy who found Matthew out there by the fence. I don't think I'm up for it right now. See if someone else can do it. Well, I took off on my bicycle about 5:00 p.m. on Wednesday from my dorm. I kind of felt like going for a ride. And so I went up to the top of Cactus Canyon, and I'm not super familiar with that area, so on the way back I didn't know where I was going. I was just sort of picking the way to go. Now, it just makes me think that God wanted me to find him, because there was no way that I was going to go that way. So I was in some deep-ass sand, and I wanted to turn around, but for some reason I kept going. So I went along, and there was this rock on the ground, and I just drilled it. I went over the handlebars and ended up on the ground. So I got up, and I was just kind of dusting myself off, and I was looking around, and I noticed something, which ended up to be Matt. And he was just lying there by a fence. And I thought it was a scarecrow. I'm like, Halloween's coming up. Thought it was a Halloween gag, so I didn't think much of it. So I got my bike and I walked it around the fence that was there. It was a buck-type fence. And got a little closer to him. And I noticed his hair. And that was a major key for me, noticing it was a human being, was his hair. Because I still thought it was a dummy, you know? I noticed, I even noticed the chest going up and down, and I still thought it was a dummy, you know? I just thought it was like some kind of mechanism. But when I saw hair, I knew it was a human being. So I ran to the nearest house. I just ran as fast as I could, and I called the police.
I responded to the call.
Officer Reggie Flutie.
When I got there, at first, the only thing I could see was partially somebody's feet. So I got out of my vehicle and raced over. I seen what appeared to be a young man, 13, 14 years old, because he was so tiny and he was laying on his back. He was tied to the bottom end of a pole. I did the best I could. I mean, the gentleman that was laying on the ground, Matthew Shepard, he was covered in dry blood, and there was dry blood underneath him, and he was barely breathing. I mean, he was doing the best he could. I tried to breathe for him, but I couldn't get his mouth open. His mouth wouldn't open for me. And, you know, he was covered in, like I said, dry blood all over his head, and the only place that did not have any blood on him, on his face, was what appeared to be where he had been crying down his face. You know, his head was distorted. You know, it did not look normal. He looked like he had had a real harsh head wound.
I was working the emergency room the night Matthew Shepard was brought in. I don't think any of us can remember seeing a patient in that condition for a long time. Those of us who have worked in big city hospitals have seen this, but there's some people who have not worked in big city hospitals, and it's not something you expect to see here. You expect to see it. You expect to see this kind of injury from a car going downhill at 80 miles an hour. You expect to see gross injuries from something like that, this terrible accident. But you don't expect to see it from somebody doing this to another person. The ambulance report said it was a beating, so we knew.
There was nothing I could do for him. I mean, if there was anything I could have done to help him, I would have done it. But there was nothing. And I was yelling at the top of my voice at him, trying to get something out of him, like, hey, hello, wake up. But he didn't move, he didn't flinch, he didn't anything.
He was tied to the fence. His hands were thumbs out in what we call a cuffing position, the way we handcuff people. He was bound with a real thin white rope. It went around the bottom of the pole, about 4 inches up off the ground. He was tied extremely tight, and so I tried to use my boot knife and slip it between the rope and his wrist, but I had to be extremely careful not to harm Matthew any further.
Now your first thought is, well, you'd certainly like to think somebody comes through from out of town, beats somebody. I mean, things like that happen, shit happens, and it happens in Laramie. But if it's somebody that's been beaten repeatedly, well, I think that's something that offends us. Yes, I think that's a good word for it. It offends us.
He was just bound so tight, and well, I finally got my knife in through there, and I'm sorry. We rolled him on over onto his left side, and when we did that, he quit breathing, and so I immediately rolled him onto his back, and that was just enough of an adjustment for me to cut him free there. I seen the EMS unit trying to get to the location, and once they got there, we put a neck collar on him, placed him on a backboard, and just scooted him out from underneath the fence. Then Rob drove the ambulance to Eyewitness's hospital emergency room.
Now the strange thing is, 20 minutes before Matthew Shepard was brought in, McKinley was brought in by his girlfriend. Now I guess the two of them had gotten into it back in town. So I'm there working on Aaron, and the ambulance comes in with Matt. Now at this point, I don't know there's a connection at all. So I tell Aaron to wait, and I go treat Matthew. So there's Aaron in one room of the ER, and Matthew in another room, 2 doors down. Now as soon as we saw Matthew, it was very clear he was beyond our capabilities. Called the neurosurgeon over at Poudre Valley. He was on the road in an hour and 15, I think.
They showed me a picture. Days later, I saw a picture of Matthew. I would have never recognized him.
Then 2 days later, we found out the connection, and I was very struck. There were 2 kids. They were both my patients, and there were 2 kids. I cared for both of them, for both of their bodies. And for a brief moment, I wondered if this was how God feels when he looks down at us. How we are all his kids. Our souls, our
This is John Peacock, Matthew's academic advisor.
Well, the news reports started trickling out on Thursday, but no names were mentioned. The brutality of the crime wasn't mentioned. All that was mentioned was that there was a man, a Laramie man, found beaten on the prairie, basically. Later that evening, they mentioned his name, and it's like, that can't. That's not the Matthew Shepard I know. That's not my student. That's not this person I've been meeting with.
I was in the coffee house,
Romaine Patterson.
and someone pulled me aside and said, I don't know much, but they say that there's been a young man who's been beaten in Laramie, and they say that his name is Matthew Shepard. And he said, do you think this could be our Matthew? And I said, well, yeah, it sounds like it could be our Matthew. So I called up my sister Trish, and I said, tell me what you know. I said, I need to know anything you know, because I don't know anything.
So I'm talking to my sister on the phone, and that's when the whole story came up on the Channel 5 News. It's just like ba-boom!
And the news reports kept rolling in. Young University of Wyoming student, his age, his description. It's like, oh my God.
I felt sick to my stomach. It's just instantly sick to my stomach, and I had to tell Romaine, yes, it was Matthew. It was your friend.
Well, I'll tell you what is overwhelming.
Matt Galloway.
Friday morning, I first find out about it. I go to class, walk out, and boom, there it is in the branding iron. So immediately, I drive to the nearest newsstand to buy a Laramie Boomerang, because, you know, I want more details. So I buy that, go home. Before I can even open the paper, my boss calls me, and he says,
Did you hear about what happened?
I'm like, yeah.
Was he in the bar Tuesday night?
I go, yes, he was.
You have to get down here right now. We have to talk about this. We have to discuss what's going to go on.
By this time, I was starting to get upset. But still, the severity wasn't out yet.
It was a Thursday afternoon.
Rudolph Stacy at Puget Valley Hospital.
I got a call. We just got a kid in from Wyoming, and it looks like he might be the victim of a hate crime. And so we agreed we needed one spokesperson. As CEO, I'll handle that, and we will try and gather all the information that we can.
And then I watched the 10 o'clock news that night when they started talking about the nature and the seriousness of it.
So I'm on the phone with Nicholson, and he's like,
We need to go to the arraignment so we can identify these guys and make sure these were the guys that were in the bar.
so we go to the arraignment.
Our focus today turns to Laramie, Wyoming, and the Albany County Courthouse, where Aaron James McKinney and Russell Arthur Henderson are being charged with the brutal beating of Matthew Shepard, a gay University of Wyoming student.
The arraignment was on Friday, right around lunchtime, and I thought, I'm just going. I just took off. It's just down the street. So I walked a few blocks and I went. Has anybody told you about the arraignment? There's probably 100 people from town there, and probably just as many news media by that point. More of the details have come out. The fact that the perpetrators were kids themselves, local kids that everyone who's from around here has some relationship to. And what everyone was really, I think, waiting on pins and needles for what would happen when they walked in. And what happened? There's probably 200 people in the room at that point. They walked in their complete orange jumpsuit and shackles. And you could have heard a pin drop. It was incredibly solemn. I mean, lots of people were teary at that point, and then the judge came in and did a reading. There was a reading of the evidence that the prosecution has, and it's a statement of the facts. And the reading of the facts was...
The essential facts are that the defendants Aaron James McKinney and Russell Arthur Henderson met Matthew Shepard at the Fireside Bar. After Mr. Shepard confided that he was gay, the subjects deceived Mr. Shepard into leaving with them in their vehicle to a remote area. Upon arrival at said area, both subjects tied the victim to a buck fence, robbed him, tortured him, and beat him. The subjects were later contacted by members of the Laramie Police Department who observed inside the cab of their pickup a pair of black patent leather shoes and a credit card belonging to the victim, Matthew Shepard. The subjects took
I
the
don't think
victim's
there was
credit
anyone
card,
who was
wallet
left in that
containing
courtroom who
$20
wasn't
in
crying
cash,
by the end of
his
it.
shoes, as well as
I
other
mean,
items,
it
and
lasted
obtained
5
the victim's
minutes,
address in order
but
to
it
make
kept
a
on getting more
burglarizer's
and
claim.
more horrific, ending with,
Both defendants left the victim begging for his life.
Sergeant Hayne,
how could this happen? I think a lot of people just don't understand. Even I don't understand how someone could do something like this. We have one of the most vocal populations of gay people in the state. And it's pretty much live and let live.
Laramie resident Jeffrey Lockwood.
My secret hope was that they were from somewhere else. But then, of course, you can create that distance. We don't grow children like that here. Well, it's pretty clear that we do grow children like that here.
So that was the arraignment. And my response was pretty catatonic. Not sleeping, not eating, don't leave me alone right now.
More and more details came out about the sheer brutality, motivations, how this happened. And then, quite frankly, the media descended, and there was no time to reflect on it anymore.
Laramie, Wyoming, often called the Gem City of the Plains, is now at the eye of the storm. This cowboy state has its share of rebels and gangs, for sure, but there are no more
As a gay college student, they hospitalized and
People like to think that
This
we're
city
not
is
more
The only difference is that in Wyoming, there are still places to blend in if you're anything other than prairie stock. It's a tough business, as Matt Shepard knew, and as his friends all know, to be gay in cowboy country.
It was huge. Yeah, it was herds, and we're talking hundreds of reporters, which makes a huge dent in the town's population. There were news reporters everywhere, news trucks everywhere on campus, everywhere in town. And we're not used to this type of attention to begin with. We're not used to this type of exposure.
Tiffany Edwards, local reporter.
These people are predators. Like this one journalist actually caught one of the judges in the bathroom at the urinal and was like asking him questions. And the judge was like, "Excuse me, can I please have a little privacy?" And the journalist was like offended that he asked for privacy. I mean, this is not how journalism started, like the Gutenberg press, you know?
I'll tell you what, when hard copy came and taped me, I taped them at the exact same time. I have every word I ever said on tape, so if they were trying anything funny, they better watch their fucking ass.
Wyoming Governor Jim Derringer, a first-term Republican up for re-election.
I'm outraged and sickened by the heinous crime committed on Matthew Shepard. I extend my most heartfelt sympathies to the family.
Governor, you haven't pushed hate crime legislation in the past.
I would like to urge the people of Wyoming against overreacting in a way that gives one group special rights over another. We will wait and see whether the vicious torture and beating of Matthew Shepard was indeed motivated by hate.
You've got the beginning of a news story. They got the graphics in the background, and they got murder in Wyoming. And Wyoming's dripping red like it's got blood on it or something. And we're like, what is this? This is sensationalism. And we're here going, wait a minute. We had the guys in jail in less than a day. I think that's pretty damn good.
And for us to be more or less maligned,
Eileen and Gil Engen.
that we are not a good community, that we are, the majority of people here are good people.
You get bad apples once in a while. I think the gay community took this as an advantage. Said this is a good opportunity for us to exploit this.
Bill McKinley, father of one of the accused.
Had this been a heterosexual that these two boys decided to take out and rob, this never would have made national news. Now my son is guilty before he's even had a trial.
Look, I do think that that the media made people accountable because they made people think. Because people were sitting in their homes watching TV and listening to CNN and watching Dan Rather and going, Jesus Christ, that's not how it is here. Well, how is it here? Matthew Shepard medical update at 3:00 p.m. Saturday, October 10th.
By this point, I looked out there, and where there had been 2 or 3 reporters, it must have been 10 or 15 still photographers, another 20 or 30 reporters, and 10 video cameras. The parents had just arrived. I barely introduced myself to them. I looked out there and I thought, my gosh, what am I going to do? Matthew Shepard was admitted in critical condition at approximately 9:15 p.m. October 7th. When he arrived, he was unresponsive, and breathing support was being provided. Matthew's major injuries upon arrival consisted of hypothermia and a fracture from behind his head to just in front of the right ear. This has caused bleeding in the brain, as well as pressure on the brain. There were also several lacerations to his face, neck, and head. Matthew's temperature has fluctuated over the past 24 hours, ranging from 98 to 106 degrees. We've had difficulty controlling his temperature. Matthew's parents arrived at 7 p.m. October 9th and are now at his bedside. The following is a statement from them. First of all, we want to thank the American public for their kind thoughts about Matthew and their fond wishes for his speedy recovery. We appreciate your prayers and goodwill, and we know that they are something Matthew would appreciate too. We have a special request for the members of the media. Matthew is very much in need of his family at this time, and we ask that you respect our privacy, as well as Matthew's, so that we may concentrate all of our efforts, thoughts, and love on our son. Thank you very much.
Both Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson pled not guilty to the charges. Their girlfriends, Chastity Paisley and Kristen Price, also pled not guilty after being charged as accessories after the fact. On our next trip, we spoke with the chief investigating officer on the case, Detective Rob Debris of the Albany County Sheriff's Department.
I think the thing that bothered me the most was when I went down to Coluga Valley where Matthew was. And the thing that bothered me the most was seeing him, touching him. As a homicide detective, you look at bodies. This poor boy is sitting there fighting all his life trying to make it. I wanted it so by the book, you know.
Keep seeing that picture in my head of when I found him.
Aaron Kreitels.
And it's not pleasant whatsoever. I don't want it to be there. I want to get it out. That's the biggest part for me, is seeing that picture in my head. And it's kind of unbelievable to me, you know, that I happen to be the person who found him, because, like, the big question with me, like, with my religion is, like, why did God want me to find him?
I know how to take care of myself, and I was irrationally terrified.
Captain Connolly.
What that means is not letting my 12-year-old son walk the streets, seeing a truck do a U-turn and thinking it's coming after me, having to stop because I'm shaking so bad. And in fact, the pickup truck did not come after me, but my reaction was to have my heart in my mouth.
Ultimately, no matter how you dice it, I did have an opportunity.
Mac Galloway.
And if I had amazing hindsight of 2020 to have tried to stop what occurred, and I keep thinking, you know, I should have noticed. These guys shouldn't have been talking to this guy. I should have not had my head down for those 20 seconds while I was washing dishes. Things I could have done. What the hell was I thinking?
So you do a lot of studying. You spend hours and hours and hours, and you study and you study and you study. Talking to your officers, making sure they understand. Talk to your witnesses, again. And always coming back to, I keep getting a flash of seeing Matthew. I wanted this so tight, there was no way these fellows were going to get out of it.
One of the things that happened when I got to the fence,
Reggie Flutie.
there was just such such an overwhelming amount of blood, you know, and well, we try to wear protective gloves, but we had a really cheap sheriff at the time, and he bought us these shit gloves, you know, and so you put them on, and they just kept breaking, you know, and well, so finally you just ran out of gloves, and well, so you figure, don't hesitate. I mean, that is what your mind tells you all the time. Don't hesitate. And so you just try to keep moving, and you try to help Matthew and find an airway, and well, you know, that's what you do, you know?
The thing I wasn't telling you before is that Reggie is my daughter.
Marge Murray.
When she first told me she wanted to be a police officer, well, I thought there was not a better choice for her. Well, she could handle whatever came her way.
Probably a day and a half later, the hospital called me and told me that Matthew had HIV. And the doctor said, you've been exposed, and you've had a bad exposure, you see, because I've been building a lean-to for my llamas, and my hands had a bunch of open cuts on them, so I was kind of screwed, you know? And so you think, oh shoot, you know?
Would you like to talk about losing sleep?
So I said to the doctor, okay, what do I do? And they said, get up here. And so I got up there, and we started those ATZ drugs immediately.
Now, they told me that's a medication that if it's administered within 36 hours after you've been exposed, it can maybe stop your getting the disease.
That is a mean, nasty medicine. Mean. I mean, I lost 10 pounds and a lot of my hair. Yeah.
Quite frankly, I wanted to lash out at somebody. Oh, not at Matthew. Please understand that. Not one of us was mad at Matthew. But we maybe wanted to squeeze McKinney's head off. And I think about Henderson. You know, two absolutely human beings. So much grief for so many people. It has been terrible for my whole family. But mostly for her and her kids.
You know what? I just think it brought home to my girls what their mom does for a living.
Well, Reggie, you know what I'm going to tell you next.
Oh, and my parents told me, you know, they both said the same damn thing.
You're quitting this damn job.
Oh, and it's just a parent thing, you know, because they're terribly proud of you, because you do a good job, whether it's handling a drunk or, you know, handling a case like this, but they're, well, you know, they just don't want you getting hurt.
Well, like I said, there's a right way and a wrong way, and then there's Reggie.
Oh, and so finally I said, oh, for God's sakes, lighten up, Francis.
You are so stubborn.
Oh, they say I'm stubborn, but I don't believe them. I mean, I just think, okay, I've heard your opinion, and now here's mine. I mean, I'm 39 years old. What are they going to do, spank me?
Oh, Reggie, don't give me any ideas.
Yeah, that would look pretty funny, you know. I mean, what can they say?
I just hope she doesn't go before me. I just couldn't handle that. University of Wyoming President Philip Dubois.
Oh, this is a young person who read my statement on the Denver Post story and sent an email to me directly and said,
You and the straight people of Laramie and Wyoming are guilty for the beating of Matthew Shepard, just as the Germans who looked the other way are guilty for the deaths of the Jews, the gypsies, and the homosexuals. You have taught your straight children to hate their gay and lesbian brothers and sisters, unless and until you acknowledge that Matthew Shepard's beating is not just a random occurrence, not just the work of a couple of random crazies. You have Matthew's blood on your hands.
well, I just can't begin to tell you what that does to you. It's like you can't possibly know what I'm thinking. You have no idea what this has done to me, my family, and my community.
month-long vigils for Matthew Shepard were held in Laramie, Denver, Fort Collins, and Colorado Springs. Soon after in Detroit, Chicago, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Nashville, Minneapolis, and Portland, Maine, among others. In Los Angeles, 5,000 people gathered, and in New York City, a political rally ended in civil disobedience and hundreds of arrests. And the Poudre Valley Hospital website received close to 1 million visitors from across the country and around the world, all expressing hope for Matthew's recovery.
Matthew Shepard, medical update, 9 a.m., Sunday, October 11th.
As of 9 a.m. today, Matthew Shepard remains in critical condition. His family continues to emphasize that the media respect their privacy. The family also wants to thank the American public for their kind thoughts and concern for Matthew.
There are certain things when I sit in church,
Jedadiah Schultz.
and the Reverend will tell you flat out he doesn't agree with homosexuality. And I don't. I think I'm going through changes. I'm still learning about myself, and I don't think I know enough about certain things to make a decision that says homosexuality is right when you've been raised your whole life that it's wrong. And right now, I'd say I don't agree with it. Yeah, that I don't agree with it. But maybe that's just because I couldn't do it. And speaking in religious terms, I don't think that's the way God intended it to happen. But I mean, I don't hate homosexuals or anything at all. And I mean, I'm not going to persecute them or anything at all. I mean, it's not going to get in the way of me and the other person at all.
Well, it's preaching schools and being gay is okay. And yada, yada, yada.
Conrad Miller.
When my kids ask me, I'd sit them down and I'd say, look, this is what gay people do. This is what animals do, okay? And I'd say, this is the life, this is the lifestyle, and this is what they do. And I'd tell them, this is why I believe it's wrong.
There's more gay people around than what you think.
Murdoch.
And it doesn't bother anybody because most of them that are gay or lesbian know damn well whom to talk to. If you cross the line, you're asking for it. Now, some people are saying he made a pass. You don't pick up regular people. I'm not excusing what those guys did. But it makes me feel better because it was partially Matthew Shepard's fault. And partially the fault of the guys who did it. You know, maybe 50-50.
Yes, as a lesbian, I was more concerned for my safety.
Zachary Salmon.
I think we all were. And I think it's because we all knew deep inside it could happen to us anytime. I'd be afraid to walk down the street and display any kind of physical affection for my partner. You don't do that here in Laramie.
Well, there's this whole idea. You leave me alone, and I'll leave you alone.
Jonas Slonaker.
And it's even in some of the Western literature, you know, live and let live. That is such crap. I mean, my friends tell me that sometimes. Even my gay friends bring it up, and I'm like, that is crap, you know? I mean, basically, what it boils down to is that if I don't tell you I'm a fag, you won't beat the crap out of me. I mean, what's so great about that? That's a great philosophy.
We went to the candle vigil, Zubaydah Eula, and it was so good to be with people who felt like shit. I kept feeling like I don't deserve to feel this bad, you know? And someone got up there and he said, blah, 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 and then he said, well, I'm saying it wrong, but basically he said, come on guys, let's show the world that Laramie is not this kind of town. But it is this kind of town. If it wasn't this kind of town, then why did this happen here? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, that's a lie. Because it trying to distance themselves from this crime. And we need to own this crime. I feel everyone needs to own it. We are like this. We are like this. We are like this.
I was at the Fireside Bar one afternoon, and I ran into two friends of Aaron McKinley, Shannon and Jen. You knew Aaron well, right?
Yeah, we both did. When I first found out about it, I thought it was really, really awful, I don't know whether Aaron was fucked up or whether he was coming down or what, but shit, Matthew had money. He had better clothes than I did. Matthew was a little rich bitch.
You shouldn't call him a rich bitch, though. That's not right.
I'm not saying he's a bad guy either. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, says the wrong things. And I won't lie to you. There were times when I was all messed up on meth and I thought about going out and robbing, but I never did. It's there. It's easy money.
Well, Aaron's done that thing before. Oh, they've both done it. Now, I know one night they went up to Cheyenne to go do it and came back with probably $300. I don't know if they ever chose, gay people as their particular targets before, but anybody that looked like they had a lot of money and was, they could outnumber or overpower. It's fair game.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there was any homophobia at all involved in this that contributed to some of it?
Probably pissed him off that Matthew was gay because he didn't like it. The gay people I've seen him interact with, he was fun as long as, they didn't hit on him. As long as it didn't come up.
As long as they weren't doing it in front of him.
Did you get the impression that he knew other gay people?
Oh, I'm sure he knew people that are gay. He worked up at KFC, and there are a couple people up there that, yeah. I'm not saying it's bad or anything, because, I don't know. Half the people I know here in Laramie are gay.
What would you guys say to Aaron if you saw him right now?
Oh, well, first of all, I'd ask him if he'd do any more tweeting.
Oh, if I saw Aaron right now, I'd be like, man, why did you fuck up like that? But I want to make sure he's doing good in there, but I'm sure he is, though. I just, want to maybe hang out with him.
Yeah, smoke a bowl with him.
I bet he wants one so.
You both went to Laramie High?
Yeah, can't you tell? We're a product of our society. On a day that is traditionally given over to nothing more profound than collegiate exuberance or the fortunes of the University of Wyoming football team, this community on the High Plains had a different kind of homecoming this Saturday, as many searched their souls in the wake of a vicious, apparent anti-gay hate crime.
University President Philip Dubois.
Well, this was homecoming weekend, and there were a lot of people in town. And there was a homecoming parade that was scheduled. And the students organized a tag on the end of it, behind the banner supporting Matthew. And everyone wearing the armbands the students had created.
I live in the center of town.
Harry Woods.
And my apartment has windows on 2 streets. One goes north and one goes south. That's exactly the homecoming parade route. Now, on the day of the parade, I had a cast on my leg because of a fall. So I was very disappointed because I wanted to walk with those people that were marching for Matthew. But I couldn't. So I watched from my window instead. And it was I'm 52 years old and I'm gay. I've been here a long time and I've seen a lot. And I was very moved when I saw the tag at the end of the parade. About 100 people marching behind a banner for Matthew Shepard. Well, 10 minutes went by and the parade went down past my apartment to the end of the block to make a U-turn. And I went to the other end of my apartment to wait for it to come up the other side.
Yeah, I was right up front there, where they were holding the banner for Matthew. Let me tell you, never had goosebumps so long in my life. It was incredible. I mean, a mass of people. You know, families, mothers holding up their 6-year-old kids, tying these armbands around their 6-year-old kids, and trying to explain to them why they should wear an armband. Just amazing. I mean, it was absolutely one of the most beautiful things I've ever done in my life.
Well, about 10 minutes went by, and sure enough, the parade starts coming down the street. And then I noticed the most incredible thing. As the parade was coming down the street, the number of people marching for Matthew Shepard had grown 5 times. There were these 500 people marching behind a banner for Matthew Shepard. Can you imagine? 500 people. The tag was larger than the entire parade. And people kept joining in. And you know what? I started to cry. Tears were streaming down my face, and I thought, thank God I got to see this in my lifetime. And my second thought was, thank you, Matthew.
I really haven't been all that involved, per se. My husband's a highway patrolman, so that's really the only way I've known about it. Now, when I first found out, I just thought it was horrible. I can't, well, nobody deserves that. I don't care who you are. But, at the same time that happened, that patrolman was killed. And there was nothing. Nothing. They didn't say anything about the old man that killed him. He was driving down the road and shouldn't have been driving and killed him. And it was just a little piece in the paper. And we lost one of our guys. This man was brand new on the force. You know, my husband worked with him. But I mean, here's one of ours. And it's just a little piece in the paper. And a lot of my feeling is that the media is portraying Matthew Shepard as a saint and making him out as a martyr, and I don't think he was. I don't think he was that pure. Now, I didn't know him, but there's just so many things that I found out that it's just scary. You know, about his character and spreading AIDS and a few other things. You know, being the kind of person that he was just a barfly, you know, and I think he pushed himself around. I think he flaunted it. Everybody's got problems. Why they exemplify him, I don't know. What's the difference if you're gay? A hate crime is a hate crime. It has nothing to do with if you're gay or prostitute or whatever. I don't understand. I don't understand.
Company member Lee Fondakowski.
This is one of the last days on our second trip to Laramie. Greg and I have been conducting interviews non-stop, and we are exhausted.
We are to meet with Father Roger at 7:30 in the morning. I was wishing we could skip it all together, but we have to follow through to the end. So here we go. 7:30 a.m., 2 queers and a Catholic priest.
Matthew Shepard has served us well. You realize that. He has served us well, and I do not mean to condemn Matthew to perfection, but I cannot mention anyone who has done more in this community than Matthew Shepard. And I'm not going to sit back here and say, I was this bold fellow, no fear. I was scared. I was very vocal in the community when this happened, and I thought, you know, should we call the bishop and ask his permission to do the vigil? And I was like, hell no, I'm not going to do that. Having his permission doesn't make it correct. You realize that. Now, I'm not knocking bishops. But what's correct is correct. You people are just here on a search, though. I will do this for you. I will trust that if you write a play of this, that you say it right. You say it correct. I think you have a responsibility to do that. Don't make make matters worse. You think violence is what they did to Matthew? Well, they did do violence to Matthew. But do you realize that every time you are called a fag, or you are called, you know, a menace, or whatever.
Or a dyke.
A dyke! Yeah, a dyke! That is violence. That is the seed of violence. And I would resent it immensely, you know, if you use anything I said to somehow cultivate that type of violence, even in its smallest form. I would resent it immensely. You need to know that.
Thank you, Father, for saying that.
Just deal with what is true. You know what is true. You have to do your best to say it correct.
Andrew Gomez.
Yeah, I was in there. I was in jail with Derek in December. You know, I got thrown in over Christmas, man. It's all married, 2 counts, I don't want to talk about it. So I was sitting there, you know, eating off Christmas dinner, trying to eat my stuff and my motherfucking bread, my little roll and whatnot. I asked him, I was like, hey, homie, tell me something, man. Tell me something, please. Why did you, okay, I'm trying to think how I worded this. I was like, why did you kill a faggot if you're going to be destined to beat a faggot later, you know? I mean, think about it. He's either going to get humped along or he's going to die, so why would you do that, man? I don't understand that. You know what he said? Honest to God, man, this is what he said. He goes, well, he tried to grab my dick. That's what he said, man. He dumb, dog. You don't even act like it was nothing. So I heard they was auctioning those boys off up there at the Maxwell, you know, where the killers go. I heard that when they found out Aaron was coming to prison, it was auctioning those boys off, you know. I'll put aside 5, 6, 7 cartons of cigarettes, man. Auction his ass off. I'd be scared to go to prison if I was those 2 boys.
Hello, Reverend. Yes, hello.
Yes, I believe your wife told you a bit about why I'm contacting you.
Yes, she did, and I don't think that I want to talk to anyone about any of this. You know, I'm somewhat involved, and I just don't.
Oh, I know. I really understand, and I don't blame you. You know, I went to your service on Sunday.
You went to the service on Sunday?
Yes, I did.
On Sunday?
Yes, this past Sunday.
Well, did I meet you?
Yes, you welcomed me at the beginning, I believe.
Oh, well, let me tell you, I'm not afraid to be controversial or to speak my mind, and that is not necessarily the views of my congregation per se. Now, as I said, I am somewhat involved in the case that the girlfriend, one of the accused, is a member of our congregation, and one of the accused is visited. Now, these 2 people, the accused, we have been after those 2 I mentioned for ages, trying to get them to live right, to do right. And now, one of those boys is on suicide watch, and I'm working with him until they put him in the chair and turn on the juice. I will work for his salvation. Now, I think they deserve the death penalty. I will try to deal with them spiritually.
Right, I understand.
Now, as for that victim, I mean, I know that that lifestyle is legal, but I will tell you one thing. I hope that Matthew Shepard, as he was tied to that fence, that he had a moment to reflect on a time when someone had spoken the word of the Lord to him, and that before he slipped into a coma, he had a chance to reflect on his lifestyle.
Thank you, Reverend. I appreciate you speaking with me.
She put her arms around me, and I put my arms around her. We just stood there, honestly, for 10 minutes. Because what else do you do? You know, and then we had to sit down and talk about things that you just... Dennis, it is now public knowledge. And I'm going to go out there and tell the whole world that this has happened. Because by this point, it was clear to us that it was the world. It was the whole world. So Judy told me what she wanted me to say, and I went out there at 4 o'clock a.m.
Matthew Shepard, medical update, 4:30 a.m., Monday, October 12th.
At midnight, Monday, October 12th, Matthew's blood pressure began to drop. We immediately notified his family, who were already at the hospital. At 12:53 a.m., Matthew Shepard died. His family was at his bedside, and the family has asked me once again to release the following statement. They've asked me to express their sincerest gratitude to the entire world for the overwhelming response for their son. The family was grateful that they did not have to make a decision regarding whether or not to continue life support for their son. Like a good son, he was caring to the end and removed guilt or stress from the family. He came into the world premature. He left the world premature. Matthew's mother said, "Go home, give your kids a hug, and don't let a day go by without telling them that you love them." And I don't know how I let that happen, but I just lost it on national television. But we had been up for like 72 hours straight and come in and had to go back home and sleep for half an hour and come back, and it was just, I don't know, maybe it was just, but, you know, in a moment of complete brain deadness, while I was out there reading that statement, I thought about my own 4 daughters, and go home and give your kids a hug, and just never kid anymore, you know, and I'm out there and I'm thinking, this is so lame, you know, and then we started getting people sending us these emails and letters to the hospital, and most of them were generally very kind. But there was this one. This one guy wrote me and he said, "Do you cry like a baby on TV for all your patients, or just the faggots?" And as I told you before, homosexuality is not something with which I agree, but having been thrown into this, you know, I guess I didn't understand the magnitude with which some people hate. And of all the letters we got, most of them were thank you for your caring and compassion. And Matthew had caring and compassion from the moment he got here.
I spoke with Doc today and told him that we would soon be coming back out for the upcoming trials of Aaron McKinley and Russell Henderson. And this is what he had to say.
I tell you what, they put those 2 boys to death. That would defeat everything Matt would be thinking about on them. Because he would not want them to die. He'd want to leave them with hope. H-O-P-E. Just like the whole world hoped that Matt would survive. The whole thing, you see, the whole thing rose around hope. H-O-P-E.
churches. One for the immediate family, invited guests, people of that nature, and then another one for anyone else who wanted to be there. And then still hundreds of people who couldn't fit into either of the churches. Well, there was this big park there, and that's where these people were. And this park was full.
The liturgy today is an Easter liturgy. It finds its meaning in the resurrection. This service invites your full participation. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray.
And I guess it was the biggest storm that they've had. Tiffany Edwards. Like that anybody could ever tell. Like trees fell down and the power went out for a couple of days because of it. I just thought it's like the forces of the universe at work. You know, whatever higher spirit is that like blows storms was blowing this storm.
For our brother Matthew, let us pray to the Lord Jesus Christ, who said, I am the resurrection and the life. We pray to the Lord.
Hear us, Lord.
You consoled Martha and Mary in their distress. Draw near to us, those who mourn for our brother, and dry the tears of those who weep. We pray to the Lord.
Hear us, Lord.
You wept at the grave of Lazarus, your friend. Comfort us in our sorrows. We pray to the Lord.
Hear us, Lord.
You raise the dead to life. Give our brother eternal life. We pray to the Lord.
Hear us, Lord.
You granted paradise to the thief who repented. Grant our brother the joys of your eternal kingdom. We pray to the Lord.
Hear us, Lord.
He was nourished by your body and blood. Grant our brother a seat at your table in your heavenly kingdom. We pray to the Lord.
Hear us, Lord.
Comfort us in the sorrows of the death of our brother. Let faith be our hope, and eternal life our consolation. We pray to the Lord.
My most striking memory from the funeral
Carrie Drake, Casper, Star Tribune.
is seeing the Reverend Fred Phelps from Kansas. That scene go up in the park.
Do you believe the Bible? Do you believe you're supposed to separate the precious from the vile? You don't believe that part of the Bible? You stand over there ignorant of the fact that the Bible, 2 times for every verse it talks about God's love, it talks about God's hate.
A bunch of high school kids who got out early came over and started yelling at the protest people, the Fred Phelps people, and across the street you have people lining up for the funeral. Well, I remember this guy. I remember this skinhead dressed in leather and spikes everywhere coming over from across the street from where the protest was into the crowd. And I remember thinking, oh, this is going to be a really ugly confrontation. But instead, he started leading them in amazing grace.
Now, we wouldn't be here if this was just another murder the state was going to deal with. Oh, no! The state deals with hundreds of murders every single day. But this murder is different because the fags are bringing us here trying to make Matthew Shepard into a poster boy for the gay lifestyle. And we're going to answer. It's just that simple.
6 months later, the company returned to Laramie for the trial of Russell Henderson, the first of the 2 perpetrators. It was to be a capital murder trial. When we got to the Albany County Courthouse, Fred Phelps was already there.
You don't like that attribute of God?
But so was Romaine Patterson.
That perfect attribute of God. Well, we love that attribute of God, and we're going to preach it. Because God's hatred is pure. It's a determination. It's a determination that is going to send some people to hell. That's God's hatred. We're standing over here with God's message. We're standing here with God's messages. Is homosexuality, is being a fag okay? What do you mean it's not for you to judge? If God doesn't hate fags, then why does he put them in hell? You see the barrenness and sterility of your silly arguments when set over some solid gospel truths. Barren and sterile, like your lifestyle, your silly arguments.
After seeing Fred Phelps protesting at Matthew's funeral and hearing that he was coming back for the trial of Russell Henderson, well, I decided that somebody needed to stand toe-to-toe with this guy and show the differences. And I think that at times like this, when we're talking about hatred as much as the nation is right now, that somebody needs to show that there's a better way of dealing with that kind of we're going to encircle Phelps. And because of our big wings, we are going to completely block him. So this big-ass band of angels comes in. We don't say a fucking word. We just turn our backs to him, and we stand there. And we are a group of people bringing forth a message of peace and love and compassion, and we're calling it Angel Action. Yeah, this 21-year-old little lesbian is ready to walk the line with him.
When those old preachers lay their hands on me, it's called an ordination. And then they deliver a charge. Mine was from Isaiah 58:1. Cry aloud, spare not, lift up thy voice like a trumpet, and show my people their transgressions.
And I knew that my angels were going to have to take the brunt of everything he had to yell and say. I mean, we were going to be blocking his view, and he was going to be like pissed off to all hell. So I went out and bought all my angels' earbuds.
The court is in session. Romaine Patterson's sister, Trish Steger.
As soon as they started jury selection, everybody was coming into my shop with, I don't want to be on this trial. I hope I don't get called. Or, oh my God, I've been called. How do I get off? Just wanting to get as far away from it as they could. Very fearful that they were going to have to be part of that jury. And then I heard Henderson had to sit in the courtroom while they questioned the prospective jurors. And one of the questions they asked is, would you be willing to put this person to death? And I understand a lot of the comments were,
No.
Yes, sir.
wow, can you imagine hearing that? Juror after juror after juror.
You entered a not guilty plea earlier, Mr. Henderson, but I understand you wish to change that plea today.
Yes, sir.
Do you understand, Mr. Henderson, that the recommended sentence is 2 life sentences?
Yes, sir.
Do you understand that these may run concurrent or they may run consecutive?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Henderson, I will now ask you how you wish to plead. Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Before the court decides whether these sentences will run concurrent or consecutively, I understand there are statements to be made by at least one individual.
This is an excerpt from the statement made to the court by Lucy Thompson.
As the grandmother and the person who raised Russell, along with my family, we have written the following statement. Our hearts ache for the pain and suffering that the shepherds have went through. We have prayed for your family since the very beginning. Many times throughout the day I have thought about Matt, and you will continue to be in our thoughts and prayers as we know your pain will never go away. You have showed such mercy in allowing us to have this plea, and we are so grateful that you are giving us all the opportunity to live. Your Honor, we as a family hope that as you sentence Russell, that you will do it concurrently, 2 life terms. For the Russell we know and love, we humbly plead, Your Honor, to not take Russell completely out of our lives forever.
Thank you. Mr. Henderson, you have a constitutional right to make a statement if you wish to do so. Is there anything you would like to say?
Yes, I would, Your Honor. Mr. and Mrs. Shepherd, not a day goes by that I don't see what happened that night. I'm very sorry for what I did.
Matthew Shepard to his death. You bound him to that fence in order that he might be more savagely beaten, and in order that he might not escape to tell his tale. You left him out there for 18 hours knowing full well that he was there, perhaps having an opportunity to save his life. You did nothing. This court does not believe that you really feel any true remorse for your part in this matter, and I wonder if you understand the gravity of your actions. The court finds it appropriate, therefore, to order sentencing as follows. As to count 3 being felony murder with robbery, you are to serve a period of imprisonment for the term of your natural life. As to count 1, kidnapping, you are to serve a period of imprisonment for the term of your natural life. Sentencing for count 1 to run consecutive to sentencing for count 3.
After the hearing, we spoke with Russell Henderson's Mormon home teacher. I've known Russell's family for 38 years. Russell is only 21, so I've known him his entire life. I ordained Russell a priest of the Mormon Church, so when this happened, you can imagine disbelief. After the sentencing, the church held a disciplinary council, and the result of that meeting was to excommunicate Russell from the church. And what that means is that your name is taken off the records of the church, so you just disappear. Russell's reaction to that was not positive. It hurt him. And it hurt him too to realize at that point how serious a transgression he had committed. But I will not desert Russell. That is a matter of my religion and my friendship with the family. Before we left Laramie, we spoke again with Rebecca Hilliker at the theater department. She is producing Angels in America at the university this year.
I think that's the focus that the university has taken, is that we have a lot of work to do, that we have an obligation to find ways to reach our students. But the question is, how do we move? How do we reach a whole state when there's some really deep-seated hostility toward gays? How do you reach them? This is the beginning. And guess who's auditioning for the lead?
My parents!
Jedadiah Schultz.
My parents were like, so, what plays are you doing at school this year? And I told them, Angels in America. I gave them the whole list of plays. And they were like, Angels in America? Is that play you did in high school? That scene you did in high school? And I was like, yeah. And they were like, so, are you going on audition for it? And I'm like, yeah. And then we got into this huge argument. And the best thing I knew I had with them was this. It was just after they'd seen me in the performance of Macbeth. And on stage, I had just killed, like, Lady Macduff, and these 2 other guys, and this little kid. And she keeps going, well, you know, homosexuality is a sin. And I'm like, Mom, I just played a murderer on stage tonight. You didn't seem to have any problem with that. I tell you, I've never prepared this much for an audition in my life. Never, ever, not even close.
I'm not having to deal that much with the gay society here in Laramie.
Detective Sergeant Rob DeGree.
Well, once we started working into the case and actually speaking to the people that were gay and hearing what their underlying fears were, well, then it sort of hit home. This is America. You don't have the right to feel that fear. Now, I know there will be people who will hold to the old ideals, and I was probably one of them 14 months ago, but I'm not going to put up with it, and I'm not going to listen to it. And if you don't like my views, fine. The door goes both ways. I've already lost a couple of buddies, and I don't care. I feel more comfortable, and I can sleep at night.
Well, you're tested every 3 months.
Reggie flew.
And I was able to have the DNA test done here, and then they flew me to Michigan, and then I was able to have the blood work done there, and then they got it to Fort Collins, and they were able to finish up the DNA work, and I don't know, it was about a week and a half later, I finally knew I was negative for good.
I'll tell you, we were all on our knees saying, Hail Mary!
And you were just delighted, you know, and you think, oh, thank God.
But what's the first thing she does?
I stuck my tongue right in my husband's mouth. I was just so happy, you know? And you just think, well, you know, I hope I did this service well, you know? I mean, I hope I did it with some kind of integrity, you know? And you're just happy. And my daughters, they just bawled.
They're so happy.
And the force,
Oh,
we
boy!
went out and we got shit-faced. Everyone was buying me drinks and giving me hugs and kisses, and I kissed everybody who came through that door.
Reggie, they don't need to know that.
Oh, it didn't matter if they were male or female. They each got a kiss on the lips.
Now, Reggie, what part of what I just said didn't you understand?
Oh, get over it, Ma.
Almost a year to the day that Matthew Shepard died, the trial for Aaron James McKinney was set to begin.
I think the question that most of you have in mind is how the McKinney case will proceed.
Cal Barusha, prosecuting attorney.
And it is the decision of the district attorney's office that this will definitely be a death penalty case.
Part of me wants McKinney to get it. Oh, but I'm not very proud of that. Well, I was on and off, and then off and on. Oh, I can't say what I do. I'm just too personally involved.
Oh, I believe in the death penalty 100%. You know, because I want to make sure that guy's ass dies. This is one instance where I truly believe with all my heart, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth.
I don't know about the death penalty, but I never want to see him walk out of Rollins Penitentiary again. I'll pay my nickel or whatever, my little percentage of tax to make sure his ass stays in jail and he never sees society again. And definitely never comes into my bar again.
Oh, I don't believe in the death penalty. It's just too much. I don't believe one person should be killed as redemption for his having killed another. I mean, two wrongs don't make a right.
How can I protest if the Shepards want McKinney dead? I just can't interfere in that. But I knew Aaron in grade school. We never called him Aaron. He was just called AJ. How can we put AJ McKinney to death?
I think our most important teachers now must be Russell Henderson and Aaron McKinney. They have to be our teachers. How did you learn? What did we as a society do to teach you that? See, I'm not sure people will let them be their teachers. I think it would be wonderful if the judge said, in addition to your sentence, you must tell your story. You must tell your story.
All rise. State of Wyoming versus Aaron James McKinney. Docket number 63H1. The Honorable Barton R. Boyd presiding. The court is in session. During the prosecution of Aaron James McKinney, the defense played a taped recording of his confession.
My name is Rob DeBree, Sergeant for the Sheriff's Office. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and may be used against you in a court of law.
The following is an excerpt of that confession.
Okay, so you guys, you and Russ, you're at the fireside. You're at the fireside by yourselves, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so where did you go after you leave the fireside?
Some kid wanted a ride home.
What did he look like?
Like a queer. Such a queer dude.
He looked like a queer?
Yeah. Like a fag, you know?
Okay. So then how did you meet him?
Russ came up. Said there was a kid that wanted a ride home. I was like, well, this kid's drunk. Let's just take him home.
When did you and Russ talk about jacking him up?
We kind of talked about the bar.
Okay, what happened next?
We get out there. We get out past Walmart. He starts grabbing my leg, grabbing my genitals. And I'm like, look, man, I'm not a fucking faggot. If you touch me again, you're gonna get it. I don't know what he was thinking, but I beat him up pretty bad. I think I might have killed him.
What did you beat him?
blacked out. Fist, pistol, butt of a gun, I don't know. It's like I could see what was going on. Somebody else was doing it.
Okay. What was the first thing that he said or did in the truck that made you want to hit him?
He put his hand on my leg like he was going to grab my balls.
When that defense team argued that McKinney did what he did because Matthew made a pass at him, I just wanted to vomit. Because that's like saying that it's okay. It's like the Twinkie defense when the guy killed Harvey Milk in Moscone. It's the same thing.
As much as a part of me didn't want them using gay bashing as their defense, part of me is really grateful. Because I was really scared that during the trial they were going to try and say that it was robbery or that it was about drugs. So when they used gay panic as their defense, I felt this is good. If nothing else, the truth will be told. The truth is coming out.
Well, did he try to defend himself against you or try to hit your back?
Yeah, he tried his little swings or whatever, but he wasn't very effective.
So how many times did you hit him in the truck before you guys stopped where you left?
2, 3, I don't know, maybe 3 times with my fist and 6 times with my pistol.
Did he ask you to stop?
Yeah, he was getting the shit kicked out of him.
Well, what did he say?
After he asked us to stop, most all he was doing was screaming.
So Russ just sort of dragged him over to the fence, I'm assuming, and then tied him up.
Yeah, something like that. All I remember was Russ was laughing at first, then he got pretty scared.
Was Matthew conscious when Russ tied him up?
Yeah. I told him to turn around so he couldn't read my license plate. He read it, and that's why I hit him a few more times.
Oh, just to be sure. So, obviously you don't like gay people.
Well, no, I don't.
Would you say you hate them?
Well, I really don't hate them, but I get pretty aggravated if they start coming on to me.
Well, did he threaten you?
What, this gay dude?
Yeah.
No, not really.
Okay. Can you answer me one thing? Why did you take his shoes?
I don't know. Now I'll never get to see my son again.
I don't know. But you'll probably be taken to the court later today.
Today? So I'm just gonna go in there and plead guilty or not guilty today?
No. You're just going to be arraigned today.
He is gonna die for sure?
There is absolutely no question that Mr. Shepard is going to die.
So what's it gonna be? 25 to life or just the death penalty? Get it over with.
That's not my job. That's the job of the judge and the jury.
Has the jury reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor. We, the jury, impaneled and sworn to try the above entitled case after having well and truly tried the matter, unanimously find as follows. As to the charge of kidnapping, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty. As to the charge of aggravated robbery, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty. As to the charge of first-degree felony murder, kidnapping, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty. As to the charge
Aaron McKinney was found guilty of felony murder, which meant the jury could pursue the death penalty. That evening, Judy and Dennis Shepard were approached by McKinney's defense team, who pled for their client's life. The prosecution indicated that they would defer to the family's wishes as to whether or not to pursue the death penalty. The following morning, Dennis Shepard made a statement to the court. Here is some of what he said.
My son Matthew did not look like a winner. He was rather uncoordinated and wore braces from the age of 13 until the day he died. However, in his all too brief life, he proved that he was a winner. On October 6, 1998, my son tried to show the world that he could win again. On October 12, 1998, my firstborn son and my hero lost. On October 12, 1998, my first
firstborn son and my hero died 50 days before his 22nd birthday. I keep wondering the same thing I did when I first saw him in the hospital. What would he have become? How would he have changed his piece of the world for the better? Matt officially died in a hospital in Fort Collins, Colorado. He actually died on the outskirts of Laramie, tied to a fence. You, Mr. McKinney, with your friend Mr. Henderson, left him by himself. But he wasn't alone. There were his lifelong friends, McKinney, friends that he'd grown up with. You're probably wondering who these friends were. First, you had the beautiful night sky with the same stars and moon that we used to see through a telescope. Then he had the day and the sun to shine on him. And through it all, he was breathing in the scent of the pine from the snowy range. He heard the wind, the ever-present Wyoming wind for the last time. He had one more friend with him. He had God. I feel better knowing he wasn't alone. Matt's beating, hospitalization, and funeral have focused worldwide attention on hate. Good is coming out of evil. People are saying enough is enough. I miss my son, but I am proud to say he is my son. Judy has been quoted as being against the death penalty. It has been said that Matt, too, was against the death penalty. Both these statements are wrong. Matt believed that there were certain crimes and incidents that warranted the death penalty. I, too, believe in the death penalty. I would like nothing more than to see you die, Mr. McKinney. However, now is the time to begin the healing process. To show mercy to one who refused to show mercy. Mr. McKinney, I am going to grant you your life as hard as it is for me to do so because of Matt. Every time you celebrate Christmas, a birthday, the 4th of July, remember that Matt isn't. Every time you wake up in your prison cell, remember that you have the ability and the opportunity to stop your actions that night. You robbed me of something precious, and I will never forgive you. Mr. McKinney, I give you life in the memory of one who no longer lives. May you have a long life, and may you thank Matthew for every day of it.
Daily, this has been my case, daily. And now it's over.
Maybe now we can just go on, and quit being stuck,
It just hit me today, the minute that I got out of the courthouse. The reason that God wanted me to find him is for he didn't have to die out there alone, And if I hadn't came along, well, they mightn't have found him for a couple of weeks at least. So it makes me feel really good to know he didn't have to die alone.
I am just glad it's over. I really am. I mean, testifying in that trial was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Don't get me wrong, I love the stage. I really do, I love it. But it's tricky. Because what you have is, lawyers questioning you from this angle, but the answers need to be funneling over this way, to where the jury is. So what you have to do is establish a funneling system. And that's tough. Because I'm a natural conversationalist, so it's just natural instinct. And when someone's talking to you, you look at that person, make eye contact. So you literally have to scoot over, change your position, in effect, funnel your answers over to where the jury is. But I was able to do that several times.
Before leaving for the last time, of seeing Jedadiah Schultz in the role of Prior in Angels in America. After the performance, we spoke.
I didn't, for the longest time, let myself get personally involved in the Matthew Shepard thing. It just didn't seem real. It just seemed way blown out of proportion. Matthew Shepard was just a name instead of an individual. It's weird, man. I just feel bad. For all that stuff I said, for that person I used to be. That's why I want to hear those tapes from last year. When I said all that stuff, how could I ever say all that stuff about homosexuals? How did I ever let all that stuff make me think you were different from me?
This is Romaine Patterson.
Well, a year ago, I wanted to be a rock star. That was my goal. And now, well, obviously it's changed in the fact that over the past year, I've really realized my role in playing my part. And so, instead of going to school to be in music, I'm going to go to school for communications and political science, because I have a career in political activism. In fact, I just recently found out that I was going to be honored in Washington, D.C. by the Anti-Defamation League. And whenever I think of my angels or any of the speaking that I've done, Matthew's like guiding this path with this light for me to walk down. And he just, every time we get to like a door, he just opens it. And he says, okay, next step. And I get to be a rock star on the side, okay.
This is Jonas Slonaker.
Change is not an easy thing. And I don't think people were up to it here. They got what they wanted. Those two boys got what they deserved. He looked good now. Justice has been served. The O.K. corral. We shot down the villains, sent the prostitutes on the train. The town's all cleaned up, and we don't need to talk about it anymore. You know, it's been a year since Matthew Shepard died. And they didn't pass shit in Wyoming. At a state level, nobody, no town, anywhere has passed any kind of laws, anti-discrimination laws, or hate crime legislation. Nobody anywhere has passed anything. So what's come out of this? What's come out of this that is concrete or lasting?
We all said we would meet again. One last time. At the fence.
I've been up to that side of my limousine, okay? And I remember the night that he and I drove around together, and he said to me, Laramie sparkles, doesn't it? And if you said where he was up there, if you said exactly where he was, Laramie sparkles from there. With the low-lying cloud, you see, it's the blue lights bouncing off the clouds over the airport, and it just goes right over the whole city. I mean, it blows you away. And that was right there in that spot. And I can just picture in his eyes, I can just picture what he was seeing up there. The last thing that he saw on this earth was the sparkling lights.
We've spent the last 2 days packing a year's worth of materials and saying our goodbyes. We've been here 6 times and conducted over 200 interviews. Jedadiah cried when he said goodbye.
Marge wished us luck. And when we asked her how she thought Laramie would feel seeing a play about itself, she said,
I think we'd enjoy it. To show it's not the hellhole of the earth would be nice. But that's up to how you portray us. And that, in turn, is up to how Laramie behaves.
As we were getting off the phone, she said to me,
Now you take care. I love you, honey.
Doc asked me if I wanted to ghostwrite a book about the whole event. And Galloway offered me, or anyone else, a place to stay, if and when we came back to Laramie. He also seemed interested as to whether or not there would be open auditions for this play.
We left Laramie at 7 o'clock in the evening. On our way to the airport, I looked through the rear view mirror for one last look at the town.
and I will speak with you. And I will trust that if you write a play of this, that you say it right. You need to do your best to say it correct.
And in the distance, I could see the sparkling lights